We have all our board members here, so I'd like to call the Thursday, April 29th Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Glenn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gretchen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Lucille, are there any comments from the public?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. Is there a move to approve the consent agenda items?
I just have one quick note about the minutes from last time. At the
Okay.
very end, it was noted that the next meeting was Thursday, the 25th of April. Not a huge deal, but instead of the 29th.
Oh, thanks for picking that up. Okay,
Sorry about that.
it's all right. So with that correction, is there a move to approve the items?
So moved.
Thanks, Gretchen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Glenn. All in favor?
Aye. If I could make just one quick comment, because the personnel changes are part of the consent agenda. And to say thank you to Scott Webster. 17 years with us, 14 as a student with us, and 17 years as a teacher with us in our system. And it's just a shame to see him go, and I wish him all the best. It sounds like a great opportunity, but it's a loss for us. It's certainly a gain for where he's going. That's it.
All right, yes, well said. Thank you, Glenn. That leads us to reports and recognition. And first up are the CABE Student Leader Award recipients. And CABE means, for people listening, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. So Kevin, I'll let you introduce these.
I sure will. So this is one of our favorite moments annually when we get to recognize our students. And so each year, 2 students from Middlebrook and 2 students from Wilton High are selected to be our CABE student leaders. Our tradition is to have the principals at each school respectively introduce their CABE student leaders, and we'll give them a round of applause and then send them on their way. So why don't we start with Principal Higgins and our 2 student leaders from Middlebrook.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I will start by saying it's always good when you get to honor students publicly like this. So I'm really happy to be doing this tonight. And honestly, I am so proud to present our 2 CABE honorees from Middlebrook. The faculty and staff could not have chosen better than these 2 fine young people. And the first CABE winner is Tanner Schmock. Tanner is consistently strong, a reliable kid, but also an independent student who achieves a high level of academic success in all of his classes. He is engaged, he's inclusive, he's a caring member of the 8 Red community of learners. You know, it's a unique thing for a 8th grade boy, but he loves his peers and they value his input and exchange of thoughts. He is genuine, and he's also genuinely enthusiastic about everything he does. Tanner's always positive, he's forward-thinking and solution-oriented. He is always willing to help out classmates and teachers alike. And he really appreciates that now is a point along the way and not a destination. He goes after opportunities with that spirit. Tanner is truly a model citizen and a remarkable winner of this year's CABE honor. Congratulations to Tanner. We won't embarrass him with a speech. Our second honoree and CABE winner is Cameron Zarnicki. Cameron was selected as a web leader, and for those that don't know on the call here, web stands for Where Everybody Belongs, meaning it's a cohort of kids that come together to try to help our younger kids. Cameron's also an apprentice at Ambler Farm. She was a captain in a French class in 7 Red and describes herself as, quote, determined, kind, and athletic, end quote. She is a remarkably good friend to her peers, and Cameron is very personable and connects well with teachers as well. She is equally comfortable and enthusiastic, whether she's speaking with peers or teachers. And she is just always positive and sunny. She's enthusiastic for every lesson that comes around, and she'll even pump her fist during lessons. She encourages others and acknowledges their good ideas in class discussions. She participates often and at length, and this is despite having a stutter. She never lets that hold her back or impede her confidence. In fact, she even did announcements over our loudspeaker at school last year for National Stuttering Awareness Week, which for those who want to know is in May. She participated in our Toys for Tots drive. She loves to problem solve, and especially in math and science, she's a creative thinker who loves to troubleshoot. She's always ready to volunteer and to help out a teacher with requests. She plays field hockey. She's also been recommended for our peer connections this year by her team of teachers. So once again, congratulations to this incredible young woman, and now a 2021 CABE winner, Cameron Sarnecki. Those are our two winners, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Jory, very much. And Cameron and Tanner, on behalf of our board and our entire Wilton community, please know how proud we are of you. And I'm tired just listening to the descriptions. I don't know when you sleep, but we're truly so proud of you and grateful to have you part of our community and look forward to your continued success. So we want to congratulate your parents as well. One of them we know very, very well. We spent an awful lot of time with her on Thursday nights. So it was fun. I wasn't sure. I was having just as much fun watching Tana, your mom, as I was watching you. Right? So congratulations again, and keep up the great work. You're really representing Wilton so well. So thank you very, very much. And so bravo. Great. Dr. O'Donnell, how about our high school winners?
Well, we too are honored to introduce our CABE Student Leadership Award students, and I'll introduce Connor Allen, and then Don Shells will have the honor of introducing Kylie Bell. Connor Allen's determination and perseverance set him apart from his peers. He is a musician, an athlete, and a student who never let setbacks or failure interfere with his drive to succeed. Above all else, Connor is a young man who generally loves to learn. He can be found deep down to online research and takes pride in his knowledge of what he calls random facts. He considers his most challenging courses to be the most interesting, specifically AP Calculus BC and AP European History. Not only required him to memorize the material, but allowed him to apply it in real life. Since his freshman year, Connor has followed our most rigorous academic path and enrolled in many of the most difficult courses offered at Wilton High School. During his sophomore year, he even took the initiative to take an online Latin course, as it would not fit into his daily schedule. He has also earned the highest test scores as a National Merit semifinalist, and in addition, he is our National Honor Society president. Connor also impresses his teachers and peers outside of the classroom. He is an avid musician and has played the piano since elementary school. As a sophomore, he turned his love of piano into an opportunity to serve his community through Keys for a Cause. He started this program by providing weekly free lessons to children and then organizing a fundraiser to provide funding to a local school's music program. Connor has played soccer from a young age, but was cut from the team at the start of his junior year. Rather than allowing this setback to negatively affect his year, Connor decided to explore a new sport and joined the local row team. He worked tirelessly to build his skills and fitness level, continuing to work even during a season that was canceled by the pandemic. Connor considers one of his greatest strengths to be his attitude in the face of hardship and/or failure. In his words, more often than not, I tend to fall off the horse, yet I never let this impact my determination to keep trying and to keep learning. He has used these setbacks as fuel and has persevered to get back on the horse. Connor has shown a tremendous amount of growth throughout his time at Wilton High School, and I expect that this growth will continue throughout his college career. He has become a more confident leader an active member of the community, and is a young man with diverse interests and passions. He is truly qualified for the CABE Student Leadership Award and is an outstanding representative of our school community. Connor will be attending Dartmouth College in the fall. Connor, congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored.
And now I have the privilege of presenting this prestigious award to Kylie Bell, another one of our amazing students at the high school. Kylie Bell transferred to Wilton High School from New Jersey during her sophomore year. Kylie, I'm from New Jersey too, and I'm gratified to see the Garden State represented here tonight. Moved from New Jersey during her sophomore year, and from day one, she's been a thorough, proactive, detail-oriented, organized, self-sufficient, and she's been a strong self-advocate. She's a talented, dedicated student, and her academic performance has been exemplary, earning an amazing 3.9 GPA during her time in Wilton. She is, perhaps more importantly, one of the most giving and selfless students here at our high school. Her leadership, for example, in the Bonamico Club and in Peervention has been invaluable. She's always been willing to go above and beyond, especially when it's to help a new student. Despite moving to Wilton after the fall sports season had already begun, Kylie eagerly jumped into the volleyball program at Wilton High School. Not only did she try out before she moved, she was attending the initial 3 weeks of team practices by commuting from New Jersey once a week. She is committed to the game of volleyball because she wants to continue to grow in the sport, and she loves the team camaraderie and competitive spirit. She eventually got selected for the varsity team. Although she didn't know anyone on the team, she fully committed herself, quickly made friends with her teammates, and was awarded the Leadership Award at the end of her first season in her junior year. She energizes her team both on and off the court, takes the game seriously, and is a natural leader. In addition to her extracurricular pursuits, Kylie also loves to write and has a passion for art, specifically photography. She has especially enjoyed her advertising class because it combines these two passions. Kylie's transition to a new high school in the middle of the year, coupled with training for Peervention, have given her resources and tools to utilize when working with others and building new friendships and connections. Kylie's participation in the school's Names Can Really Hurt Assembly, sponsored by the Anti-Defamation League, showed remarkable courage. She listens attentively, seeks to show empathy toward those around her, and has used these skills to help others who may be experiencing their own personal challenges. In closing, Kylie is humble. She would never say any of these things about herself. That's why I have to say them. Kylie is humble, caring, kind, and compassionate, and she's always ready and willing to help her fellow students. She's truly qualified for the CABE Student Leadership Award and is an outstanding representative of our school community. She will be attending a prestigious state research university in the Big Ten in the fall. And Kylie, out of respect for your achievement, I'm going to supply the suggested flourish when I say the name of that school. In the fall, Kylie will be attending the Ohio State University. Congratulations on this amazing award.
Okay. Well, thank you to the principals for those wonderful descriptions. And I just want the recipients to know, and congratulations to all of you, that the CABE Awards are a longstanding tradition. These are prestigious awards. So all our board members congratulate you on your wide range of accomplishments and passions. Very, very impressive. And we wish you well in your next steps. And congratulations, you make Wilton proud. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
And if you'd like, you can stick around for the meeting, or you can go pursue one of your other more outstanding passions, more interesting passions. So good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's a great way to start the meeting. For the board chair's report, just a couple of very quick things. One is just a reminder and encouragement for everyone. The town meeting, the annual town meeting is Saturday, May 8th at the Clune Center at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Will be a little bit different in terms of much shorter and to the point. And then the vote will occur Saturday, May 15th. And it's incredibly important that everybody follow this process and end up with voting on May 15th. And my other just follow-up announcement is, I think at the last meeting, I brought up the Chasing Childhood movie and the discussion that was sponsored by the Wilton Youth Council. I couldn't attend the discussion, but the film is very impressive, and reminder in terms of how we should not hover so much about our kids and instead try to encourage the right amount of independence and let them enjoy some free time, which is very productive. And also that reminder to the school system that we have such a tradition of academic excellence, that we remember that there are many forms and definitions of success, and we should keep expanding those and recognizing all different talents and all different kids. So anyway, so thanks to the Wilton Youth Council for spearheading that effort. Superintendent's report.
I just have a couple of reminders and some updates. They're all brief. First topic for me is the one that probably the entire community is tired of hearing from me about, and that's COVID-19. So our numbers are really, they're getting better day over day, week over week. Here in Wilton, across Fairfield County, we are definitely moving in the right direction. And so we're looking forward to continuing to be able to loosen restrictions as more people get vaccinated and the COVID-19 numbers continue to decline. All of that being said, I do want to remind everybody who may be listening, we do need to continue to be vigilant and practice and adhere to all of those mitigation strategies that we put in place. Those are the reasons why we're seeing our numbers decline. And so we need to hang in there. The school year is rapidly coming to a close, and we want to end on the highest note possible. And so it's really important that we all continue to adhere to our COVID mitigation strategies. Also, reminder to everybody who may be watching or listening, we've been running a COVID-19 surveillance testing program for just over 6 weeks now here in the district, and we've had some reasonably good participation, and we'd like to continue to expand that participation. So every notice that I send out alerting community members to COVID activity here in our schools, there is a section that speaks to the surveillance testing with links to participate. And we would encourage everybody who is willing and able to participate in that surveillance program. It's really important to our efforts here at keeping COVID contained. So thank you for that. On the congratulations front, we first want to recognize our high school teacher, Lara Fayek, and outstanding parent volunteer, Lynn Martinez, who's involved in so many things over at the high school. They and our students in the Red Cross Club organized a very successful blood drive that took place this past Sunday. We had 65 units of blood donated, and the donations have the possibility of positively impacting up to 195 people. So congratulations to them, and we're just so grateful for their willingness to do that. We also want to take a minute and recognize our very own Jake Arnowitz, who, while balancing so many other responsibilities, has been working for several years to improve our Board of Education broadcasts. Jake recently committed to attending the Berklee School of Music in the fall. So we want to say congratulations to Jake and wish him the very best as he gets ready to start the next chapter of his educational career.
Yay, Jake. Thank you.
Proud of him. We're very, very proud.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. This week, we also celebrated Bus Driver Appreciation Week. And so we want to take a minute and recognize all of our bus drivers who serve as unsung heroes every morning and afternoon, transporting our students to and from school. As we know and say often, it takes a village, and our bus drivers are integral members of our village here in Wilton. And so we want to recognize and acknowledge their dedication. They show up every day and make sure that the buses are running. So we're really grateful and want to acknowledge our bus drivers.
Yeah, well deserved, Kevin. Please extend the appreciation of the board too.
Of course I will, absolutely. And last and certainly not least, we want to take a minute and recognize not only our high school community, but our entire community. Earlier this week, U.S. News and World Report published its annual high school rankings. I was very pleased to see that Wilton High School was ranked number 6 in the state. And so a true testament to the hard work and dedication and expertise of our staff, as well as the dedication and achievement of our students. So we're very, very proud of that recognition. Similarly, we picked up some news that niche.com had also recently completed some rankings, and in their rankings, Wilton High School was listed as number 5 in the state. And so, again, just a true testament, Bob, to you, to your staff, to your leadership, to the great work and dedication of our students. And so we're really grateful for that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, congratulations. And it is a sort of a K-12 capstone. So I think it's a recognition of the whole district. So it's great news. So.
Bravo. Yep. So that concludes my update.
Okay, thank you. Great note to end on. Committee reports. Not sure if any committees have met. I don't think so.
Options not met.
And teaching and learning policy. Okay. All right, thanks. All right, that leads us to our discussion items. The first one is the social emotional health survey. And Kevin, I don't know who you want to introduce that.
So Kim Zemo, who you all know very well, is our District Safe School Climate Coordinator. She has been spearheading this work across the district and coordinating with teams. Kim has some very encouraging data to share, so we'll turn it over to her. And Kim, I did make you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. Just make sure. Okay. All right, you can see my screen, I hope. Loading. Great. Technical issues here. All right. So tonight I'm going to be reporting out on the universal screening and checklist that we had been working through this year, and also our wellness, well-being survey. And really these efforts have been an effort to kind of double down and make sure that we have a pulse on how our kids are doing due to the pandemic, and that nobody is falling through the cracks. And before I start, with each new tool means more outreach from our mental health staff. And they've done just an amazing job. And I think the data will show that, what a great job with the interventions that are in place and the work that we're doing to ensure that our kids are doing okay, and that our kids that are struggling, that we're putting things in place. So I'm just going to start with the results from the high school. Now, we did the best tool at the high school. This is a self-report screener that looks to measure behavior and emotional strengths and weaknesses, and then help us provide early interventions to students who may be at risk for certain behaviors. And it looks at internalizing, self-regulation skills, and personal adjustment. We started out screening our 9th graders to kind of see how the process was going to work. And you'll see the results were really positive, with over 80% of our kids in the expected range. We had 11% in the elevated and 3% in the highly elevated. A very small percentage opted out. And we had great participation with over 94% of our freshman students. We then launched it with the students in grades 10 through 12. We're still in the process of compiling this information and doing outreach. Again, the results were very promising, with over 80% in the expected range, 10% in the elevated, and less than 2% in the highly elevated. For this go around, 7% opted out. Our participation rates weren't as strong. We had close to 50%. Primarily, a lot of our seniors did not take it. This was optional, and parents could opt their students out. We're in the process of reviewing all the elevated data, reaching out to students, and notification on where students fell will go out to families next week. We then did a different tool, which was developed in-house, and that was for our elementary students. And again, this was more on the observable side. So what are teachers seeing in the classroom? Again, the data was very promising in terms of our systems that are in place are identifying the kids. The kids that came up on this checklist were students already receiving services or in the SRBI process or had behavior plans in place. So no new information really came out of the observable checklist. And at Middlebrook right now, we're in the process of doing the checklist for grades 6 and 7. We'll be compiling that data in the next couple weeks, and the team there has decided to screen our 8th grade students prior to coming to the high school. So that's still in progress. So where we are and what's next, and again, the tool that we used at the elementary level really reaffirmed that our systems in place for identifying students who may need additional support are working, that our mental health teams are well aware of the students that are in distress, and that our processes for identifying these students are working. The elementary team did share concerns that the checklist tool really is only looking at kids that are externalizing. It's not necessarily picking up those internalizing behaviors, which we knew. And so that is in discussion in terms of what we can do more formal, looking at those internalizing students. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on our well-being survey. At the secondary level, at the high school, the screener is identifying students that we might not otherwise know are struggling. A freshman counselor had stated that part of the follow-up that she did really gave her an opportunity to get to know some of her students more deeply. So the work moving forward will continue to develop our SRBI process for behavior, social, and emotional concerns. We're going to look at the checklist that we developed, see if that's the best tool, refine it, and talk about what the next steps will be there, and then refine our process for using the screener. We will be embedding the screener in transition years, and so that's going to be a plan for next year. And really, the overwhelming feedback was, with the tools to take time and pause in the classroom, and for teachers to take a look and calibrate when they're looking at behavior and social emotional, that just that process in and of itself had a lot of value, even if it didn't necessarily identify new students. All right, so one sec. Can't see people as I'm presenting, and it's weird. Okay, so the next tool that we use this year is our Panorama platform, which houses our school climate survey, as well as our looking at social emotional learning. And we used a tool around student well-being. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the science behind well-being to kind of give you an idea of what we were looking at. And so in the past, well-being was thought of as the absence of risky behavior or mental illness. And in the last 10 to 20 years through positive psychology, things have really changed when looking at well-being. And it's been refined to really look at positive experiences, thoughts, and feelings that enable kids and adults to thrive. So the Panorama survey is really built around a strengths-based perspective, with the goal of helping us to help our students grow and build around happiness and well-being. The survey is built on student voice and experiences. So how are students interpreting their experiences? Are their days filled with loneliness or happiness? Do they feel safe? Do they feel supported? So to understand student well-being, it has to be more than just observation. We really need to ask students about their experiences. So the areas that we looked at are around emotions and around relationships. And we've been talking about relationships for a long time in our schools, because we know that that is one predictor of ensuring that when kids feel connected, they do better, and it creates a positive climate. When looking at emotions, we really need to measure them to take them seriously. So we can't only measure positive feelings, we really need to measure the challenging feelings as well. And the best way to do this is to really look at frequency. So this is just a chart of, and I'll go through the data, but we looked at positive feelings, and there's an example of a question, challenging feelings, and then supportive relationships. We also added questions around, what's nice about the Panorama tool is we can use surveys built by them and then tailor them to our own needs. So we added some questions around student engagement, as well as I can't read the bottom of my screen, but it was student engagement and around connectivity. Okay. Just really quick in terms of the social science around relationships. So we know that support saves lives, and in the sense that people who feel supported live longer and are less stressed than people who are isolated. And support can be emotional, it can be tangible or informal. So it can be a letter of recommendation can seem like support. It can be an outreach to a kid, some advice about something that's going on. And support we know is perceived, not just received. So the perception really matters, and sometimes it matters more than feeling supported can mean just as much as when it's actually happening. And then support comes from families, peers, and teachers. So that's the tool and the survey that we built. We're pretty pleased with participation, really high at Cider Mill and Middlebrook, and we're hovering at 50% at the high school, which was similar to the screener tool. You'll notice our youngest students participate the most. They're pretty compliant. Our high school our seniors have the least bit of participation. Okay, so here is our data. So this looks at positive feelings, challenging feelings, and emotion regulation. This is the first time that we've actually been able to take data around SEL, social emotional learning skills. So we are happy that we were able to kind of pilot that and see what that looks like. So you'll see Wilton High School and Middlebrook, the scores are pretty pretty similar, and the percentages are favorable responses. So 69% of our high school students report feeling positive feelings. And then 61% of those students reported not feeling the challenging feelings. So I want to make sure that I report that correctly. And then 54% have favorable responses around emotion regulation. So you can see those broken out by each school. I'll explain that a little more deeply as we go into some of the questions. So again, here are, when you're looking at the Panorama results, it's always the favorable responses. So in the past week, students answer how often do they feel excited, happy, loved, and safe. You'll see the responses by each school. I'll move this over here. Hopeful was not a question that's asked to Cider Mill students. So this survey ran grades 3 through 12. It's the first time that we've been able to gather the data for our elementary school students as well around some of these areas. Okay, and then our challenging feelings. So again, in the last week, how often did you feel? The higher the score is the less frequent of the negative feeling. So that's a piece I want to make sure that I clarified. Again, frustrated was not a score that was asked for our elementary students.
Can I ask one question regarding the frustrated? I know you've said this, but just to clarify.
Yep.
81% and 82% have a positive feeling. They're not feeling frustrated.
Correct.
Okay, so it's the other 19.
Yeah, this is the reverse of the positive feelings. I know it gets a little confusing. So they ask on a scale of frequency. So it's the frequency is they're not feeling it. So 81 or 82% of the time.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Kim, if we're asking questions now, can I ask you one more?
Absolutely.
What were the questions around feeling safe?
Mm-hmm. That was a general question. And so we're interpreting that question, or, I expect that to be low because of COVID. And in talking with Panorama in terms of, in this context, that is, on the low side, I think, because of the environment that we're in right now. So kids aren't thinking necessarily the physical plant, but more the impact of COVID.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, and then here's the data for our motion regulation skills, and you can see the questions, how, when you're feeling pressure, how easily can you stay in control? How often are you able to pull yourself out of a bad mood? Again, we would expect our younger students to not be as good at this as our older students. And what's nice about this data is we can then begin to look at this more granular. And so what type of interventions or what type of teaching practices around emotion regulation and other SEL skills do we need to put in place based on this data? So eventually down the line, when we do start to collect data around our SEL practices, we have a tool where we can look at it, by building and all the way down to the classroom level to really support kids in this area. And again, favorable responses. The next area was around engagement and student relationships. So you'll see Wilton High School, Middlebrook, and Cider Mill, comparable, the engagement scores and the relationship scores. There, I'm going to break this down a little more detailed because this is the average favorable score, but there's several questions that impact it. And I think there's good news in here in terms of how kids are feeling, and some expected, again, because of the circumstances that we're in. I will note that when the kids took this survey, it was right before spring break for the high school. You'll see that in the word cloud at the end in terms of how students responded. And our middle school had just gone back to full in. Our Cider Mill kids had been in full for quite a while, and the high school was just transitioning to the 75%. So I think some of that impacted how they answered some of the questions. Right, so engagement. So how much effort are you putting in? So our kids are putting in what they feel is a great deal of effort right now. So this is great, but it's hard for them. They're feeling it's difficult to do their schoolwork. And again, it's the 6 through 12s as compared to the Cider Mill students. And then how difficult or easy, again, kids are having a hard time staying focused on their work right now. And Panorama determines what makes up the favorable responses. So it's a scale. So for some, somewhat is included and sometimes it's not. So in here, they take the top 3 scores. So kids are putting in a lot of what they feel is a lot of effort, but it's hard right now. And again, we would expect this during COVID and all the challenges with the change and the mitigation measures that are in place. And then the last scores to report are around connectedness. And again, this is really positive to see that our students feel they're adults, that they can go to for help if they need it. But the connection scores are down, and again, we would expect this because of I think COVID. The other piece here, so in the percentages, the favorable responses take just the top 2, extremely and quite connected. If we were to include the kids that felt somewhat connected, the score would be up to 70% for the grades 6 through 12. And then how connected do you feel other students? And so again, these are the students that answered extremely connected and quite connected. So they're feeling more connected to their peers than adults. And then there were 3 open-ended questions and then a raise your hand question. So if a student wanted to talk with someone about how they're doing or needing extra support, they could put their name in the survey. Otherwise, it was anonymous. And then staff could follow up with them after the survey. So it was just another measure of making sure that, we're getting to all the students necessary. And then these were the free responses, the questions that were asked, thinking about everything. What feels hardest for you? And this is one from our middle school students. What can teachers do to better help? This is from our Cider Mill students. Breaks was a big one at the high school as well. And then I just wanted to end with this because I thought it was great to see that our high school students, that family makes them the happiest. So I think that speaks volumes to the support in the community, and that families have come together during this challenging time, and our adolescents are recognizing that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing, I think, and I can see people. It's weird to present and not see people. But overall, I think the data was positive for such challenging times that we're in. Panorama cautions us, in terms of it's too soon to really look at national norms and how things compare, because we don't know how to interpret all the data yet and what the impact of COVID is going to be. But I think overall it's positive, and what we really feel good about is that we have multiple measures now to kind of triangulate and make sure that we're reaching out, and that we know the students that maybe need more support that weren't initially on the radar. And that's really the goal of what we're doing. Any questions?
Thanks. Yeah, any questions from board members? Kim, I just wanted to say that it sounds like the Panorama survey, while maybe a little convoluted in terms of, trying to get the wording, in terms of reporting, it sounds quite comprehensive. And yes, there's a lot of good news here, but I think it's also kind of a stark reminder when you look at the safety one, thanks to Jen's question, just the safety and the connectedness and the ability to focus. So if we can attribute that, or at least the lower scores in large part to the impact of COVID, it will be very important for us to look at the scores next year and see what the comparison is. So I was just struck by some of that it's, we hear like, oh yeah, I'm sure, it seems like it's going to make a difference. And then this seems to give you the data to support that, those sort of assumptions or feelings that we've been having about the impact. So thanks for something that's shows it so dramatically.
Well, and we're on. I think we're on the right path in terms of the data collection and looking at the emotions as well as the social emotional skills. And I think this platform will offer us a lot of opportunity moving forward. The survey just recently closed, so the schools really haven't had a time yet to kind of digest and look more deeply. The one thing I forgot to say, which is more good news, is we were able to break out the data for our remote learners, and it's very comparable. There was nothing that was drastically, different than in school versus our remote learners. So I think that's positive as well.
Yeah. Anything we can do to get more seniors to respond or more upperclassmen to respond to surveys?
It's hard.
Okay. So any questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. That was a great report. A lot of insights there. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So the next agenda item is the Project Open Choice. Kevin.
Great, thank you. And for this segment of the agenda, I also invited to join us this evening Dr. Chip Dumais, who is the Executive Director of Cooperative Educational Services. That's the regional education service center that supports Wilton and our surrounding neighbors here in Southern Fairfield County. I invited Dr. Dumais because he and CES are the overseeing or administrating agency of Project Open Choice here in the region, and I'll talk you through just some of the high points of the program and why we're even talking about it now. And then I think Chip is very capable of responding to questions as he's been overseeing it for several years. So first, just a bit of background. We're talking about Project Open Choice tonight because there is a proposed bill, it's number 255. I sent you the language, it's very simple, that proposes to expand the Open Choice program to include both Norwalk and Danbury as sending districts. The Open Choice program is a voluntary interdistrict public school attendance program that proposes to, 1, improve academic achievement, 2, reduce racial, ethnic, and economic isolation or preserve racial and ethnic balance, and 3, provide a choice of education programs. The program is overseen by the Connecticut State Department of Education and then coordinated locally by Dr. Dumais and his staff at CES. Transportation in the program is provided by the RESC, and there's no cost to the receiving district. The State Department of Education provides a grant of $3,000 per each out-of-district student if the number of out-of-district students is less than 2% of the total population of the receiving district. And then the per pupil grant increases if the number of open choice students grows beyond 2% of the receiving district's total student population. And then should an out-of-district student require special education or related services, the sending district shall pay the amount equal to the difference between the cost of services and the grant paid by the State Department of Education. So this program has been in place for many, many years around the state, particularly up around Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, send students to some of our neighboring districts, and districts have taken advantage of the opportunity, particularly when they're operating in communities that don't have a great deal of diversity, as a tool to try to increase the diversity of their student population and increase exposure to different backgrounds to students who live in town. And generally, the way those school districts have operated is if they have available seating in some of their classrooms, they'll make some of those seats available to Project Open Choice students. So Chip, what did I miss and what else would you add that describes the program?
Kevin, you did a fantastic job of summarizing that. Really encompasses what Open Choice is. And it has been operating since 1997. I think that one of the questions that comes up is students and activities, and as well as students and opportunities in the district. So Open Choice students are treated as though they are a resident of the town, and therefore would have the right, once they start, to move right on through to graduation and participate in any other activities that a Wilton resident student would participate in. That might be the only thing I would add.
Great. And so I was on the state website today looking to see if there was any update or further action on the bill, and I didn't see any further action. So as far as I know, it's still sitting in committee. There haven't been any public hearings or anything like that as of this point. So as I understand the legislation, if it's adopted by the legislature, Norwalk and Danbury would be added as sending districts, and that would be set to begin, I believe, in the fall of 2022. And so I think if this was an option that the board here wanted to entertain, we'd certainly have some time to do some further investigation. One of the other questions that comes up pretty routinely, and Chip can speak to this as well, is around cost. And what is the cost of providing a seat to an open choice student? And I think one of the ways it's often captured is if we think of a classroom and there's a fixed cost tied to running that classroom given the number of students. If there is a vacant seat, there's no there's no additional marginal cost to putting a student in that seat. And so it's often considered kind of a low or no cost opportunity, and then you factor in the subsidy that the state provides. So I think if we have vacancies, and this was something that the board wanted to pursue, it would be my proposal that we target students in the youngest grade, so perhaps beginning at kindergarten or first grade, and then we would work to bring students in and then try to keep them so they get a full Wilton education. I think the big question for us, of course, as we've been talking about for many months, is the status of enrollment and what's enrollment going to look like.
So, if I may, one small piece, Kevin, is that Norwalk and Danbury, while they would be predominantly sending kids, they're not really the sending districts because the opportunity works in both directions. So while Bridgeport participates, there are students, roughly 30 students from area towns who actually choose to go to school in Bridgeport, primarily at the military academy that Bridgeport operates. And the second piece is that while the tiers of reimbursement are generally based on the percentage of your enrollment, there's also an opportunity if the enrollment significantly increases. The significant increase is a 50% increase. The reimbursement rate goes up to $6,000. And I mention that because if you're reading the news, you may have seen that Fairfield just requested in their budget to, I think that the town asked them to think creatively about revenue. And this was certainly creative. By adding 30 kids in open choice across a number of grade levels, they did increase their participation by over 50% and doubled their reimbursement.
Great, thanks, Chip. Great, so Debbie, take some questions, and certainly we have Chip here who.
Oh, sure, of course. Gretchen, do you have a question? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out, obviously our numbers are down right now, so it seems like a good time, but how do we determine how many children would come in if it's only going to be K through 3 the first year? You made comments about if there's an open seat, that's great. But if we eventually move into either Middlebrook or into the high school, especially where some classes are so popular that they're filled, is that going to then limit and we have to turn away the open choice kids? And they say, well, no, you can't take this class because we can't fit you in it. I'm not understanding how logistics on some of the, more finite details happen in the numbers.
So Kevin, you might have to address some of this. I'll give a slight overview. The legislation allows for 50 students in the Danbury area and 50 students in the Norwalk area. So total. So you can anticipate that if there are 5 towns around Norwalk, that at most 10 students per town, you have 2, 3, 4 elementary schools in a particular district. So it's a couple students in an early grade level to start. The first year in the fall, starting 21-22, is the funding from the state covers administration of the program from the RESCs, community outreach, and professional development. There does need to be some professional development for teachers in addressing cultural differences and having students from another town, that type of thing. And there also needs to be some community outreach in order to make sure people are well informed about how the lottery works. Everybody has an equal chance to participate. In terms of, again, once a student becomes part of open choice, then they are treated as a resident. So if they get to the high school and you are looking at course registrations, they're treated just like every other student.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think at least I know. So it's 50 students per school. It's a lottery. So it's, if it ends up being Danbury and Norwalk also could go to others, like, are they this will also be open to New Canaan and Ridgefield. Is that correct? I'm guessing.
So yes, so for Norwalk, you'd essentially be doing Darien, Wilton, New Canaan, Weston, Westport. Weston and Westport already participate, but their students come from Bridgeport. And one of the limiting factors, so if you're familiar with Easton and Reading in Region 9, Reading participates in open choice. I'm sorry, Easton participates in open choice and Reading doesn't. But it's not a question of whether or not the towns want to. It is that the bus ride from Bridgeport to Reading just exceeds the parameters for what we're willing to put elementary school kids through.
That would make sense.
Mhm.
Okay. And yet sorry, it was the whole logistics and, numbers, and it was just confusing me, but I have a better understanding now. Okay.
But
Yeah.
Kevin, we would be looking at like how many students, if we were starting at elementary level. It sounds like it's not 50, it's a handful of that.
Yeah, maybe less than a handful, I would say, probably a couple. And certainly, Chip, when families apply and put themselves in the lottery, would they select, like, I'd be interested in attending Wilton schools, or is it, you've been selected and, they don't have a choice of what district they would go to?
So once the seats are determined by, once the seats are determined by the district, so you would have to let the state know that you'd be willing to open up 2 seats or 1 seat in each of your kindergarten classrooms, or whatever that happens to be. At that point, entering the lottery, I don't believe that individuals have an option for the town other than to participate in the lottery. The only preference that's given is for siblings of students who are already in an open choice program.
Okay. And so the town itself will make, or, between Kevin or the board, somebody's going to decide, we're going to come back to you and say, we have room for X amount of students.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's how it's determined.
Yep.
Okay.
You'll make that decision on an annual basis for how many students you'd like to include. And there's no obligation to increase, decrease, or continue to participate, except for the students who you have accepted. Okay. They have the right to continue through graduation.
Okay.
Charles, who pays for the transportation?
So the transportation is funded through a grant from the state. So if you look at the legislation, it's separated into training for teachers, management from the RESC, the reimbursement piece, and transportation. And transportation is, of course, a large chunk of it. If you imagine, let's say 5 kids from Norwalk going to Wilton, they're essentially picked up at the end of their driveway, because it's not as though there are 5 of them all at the same bus stop. So it's essentially door-to-door service, but that's funded by the state.
And that will be funded in perpetuity by the state? I mean, there's no chance of Wilton having to pick that up at any point?
They've been doing it since 1997, and if there is a potential liability, it sits with me. The state generally does a transportation grant, and then they never, typical of how most of the grant funding through the state works, they never pay exactly what they're supposed to initially. So they have a supplemental transportation grant that we apply for each year, and they've been pretty good about paying for transportation in full.
How does the transportation work as the kids get older and want to participate more in after-school activities? Has there been problems in the past of being like fully integrated into the community, the school community programs because of transportation?
Ms. DeLuca, you have identified one of the gaps in the open choice program. There is no after-school transportation. So there is the possibility that may interfere with students integrating into the entire after-school activity culture. Although many of the students in open choice do find a way to participate, and they find transportation at the high school level.
Can I ask another financial question? You guys talked about money, the $3,000 per student, possibly increasing depending on how many children we would take or not take. Is that money guaranteed from K through 12? Is there any point where we could take a child in kindergarten and by 6th grade find out that the state doesn't have the money for it and now Wilton is picking up the cost?
While I cannot predict the future, past experience is probably the best indicator of future behavior. And the state has consistently funded the reimbursement per student at the rate that they've said for every student in each district. So the short answer is I would anticipate that it would continue just the way that it has.
Okay. And a student who was possibly having special needs and needing assistance, the district that they're coming from, do they honor that and pay the cost?
We have not had to address a single issue of financial dispute over special education.
Okay.
So,
and districts are never, like a sending district isn't arguing with, let's just make something up, but say Danbury sends a student to Wilton and Wilton identifies this child as having needs. Does Danbury argue with us that that child does or does not? Are they going to question what we're suggesting?
It generally does not happen. There is, of course, the way that the statute reads is it reads that the reimbursement for special education will be for fair and reasonable costs of services. Occasionally there are situations where if it's fair and reasonable to provide X in order to for an intervention, some districts by choice, because of how they do things, say, you know what, we always put in extra interventions for this type of disability. So we're going to do it here too, because this student is our student. That might be a situation where fair and reasonable could be argued by the sending district. But again, we have in all this time with districts like Westport and Weston participating, not had to intervene in terms of getting a district reimbursement for special education costs.
Okay.
I present it because it is a possibility within the way that the statute is written.
Right.
Yeah.
Chip, you mentioned Westport. Can you just talk a little bit about how long Westport has participated, if you know, and what their experience has been? And if not, is there a way for us to find out?
On the I shared a couple of years ago, the state actually did a study of academic performance in choice programs. And students do better when they participate in choice programs is the bottom line. I think that we did some research at CES probably about 10 years ago on all of the Bridgeport students and found in general that behavior was better for open choice students when compared to their peers. Performance was better. I think in order to see what the individual district is feeling in terms of their interaction, I can give you the numbers that they have, and mm-hmm. I think that some good evidence is that when Fairfield decides that they're going to increase the number of students by 35 in the next year, that they see some value in participating in that program. What I can do is let me get Mark Ribbons, who's does the direction of the program. I'll have him get a list of district facilitators, the person in each district who is the person with whom we would connect in terms of that. And then either you or Kevin could reach out to them for some feedback. I'm sure they'd be glad to talk to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just as a bit of history, you mentioned open choice started in 1997. When I started working in Wilton in 19, whatever that was, but it was before 97, like 87. There is a program called, oh, I'm going to forget.
Yeah, Project
Concern.
Project Concern, something like that. Yeah.
Right, right. And at that point in time, Wilton High School, there were, I can't remember, maybe 6 or 7 students from Bridgeport attending. And that went smoothly, but I think what happened was that you mentioned before, the bus ride, was just kind of crazy in terms of the length for those poor kids. So that was a lot for them to deal with. But anyway, so this idea of either open choice or even Project Concern before that, so it's obviously not new.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And even, communities, there are other similar programs. There's a better chance that exists in New Canaan and Darien, right? Where residential programs for students and other pieces.
And Wilton.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So then what would be our next steps if it's still a bill? At what point does the board, need to kind of discuss and decide? And you mentioned the fall of 2022, which is not this September. And obviously some of this is enrollment dependent. And then, so those questions. And then the other one about, Kevin, you had said, thinking about the younger grades, is that the traditional approach is to, I don't know, Chip, if you have experience with other districts, is that sort of typical, start early?
So actually, I have very specific experience as the former superintendent in the Amity Regional School District, where we served students in grades 7 to 12. Or our sending districts, Orange, Bethany, and Woodbridge, would take on open choice students. They would become our students in 7th grade, but open choice in New Haven would always ask us to take on additional students in 7th grade. The challenge became that you go to school for 6 or 7 years in any school system and switch to another, there are challenges already. So having students participate in the early grades has shown the greatest amount of success for those students.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I think, Debbie, to your other questions in terms of next steps for the board, I think, first it's important to just have this conversation to give it some consideration. The board will have to spend some time at a future meeting conducting further deliberations and conclude whether or not it's a program that we'd want to adopt here in the school district, because the proposed start date for the 2 new sending districts, Norwalk and Danbury, at least in our case, wouldn't be until the fall of 2022. We do have some time, and I think that'll also be beyond the deliberation, just some of the mechanics. And so we'll, flesh out, working with Chip, I think if we can get some more information from some local districts who have experience about, what really did work well and perhaps what didn't. And then we need to watch our own enrollment trends.
Kevin, a good target would probably be late fall because in general, the lottery is a January-ish type of event.
Right, so late fall of 21.
To identify seats, absolutely. Yeah.
For the fall of 22. Okay, all right. And by then, and Chip, you hear us talking a lot about enrollment. Our enrollment has been sort of declining, but leveling off at the elementary school. And then with COVID and some parents, withdrawing kids, but on the other hand, how many of those are going to return? And then the real estate market has gone crazy, and we don't yet know the full impact of enrollment, until we're going to see it in August. So that's something we have to absolutely watch.
It's something else to think about in terms of the number of seats and the distribution. In any kind of situation like this, it's tough to be the only one. So if it's a choice between one or two, I would urge you to go with two. Or
Yeah. There are a lot of things to discuss, around this concept. So we just have to sort of take it one careful step at a time. But we really appreciate all this information, lots to think about, and obviously deliberate. So this is new to us, in terms of the full board presentation. So we'll need some time to discuss this. So thank you. That's been really helpful. And Kevin, is there anything else we should know for tonight, or?
Nope, I think that really I think you've got a lot of information, some things to think about. And so Chip, I think if anything else for this group?
No, so I'll get you a list of district facilitators. And one thing that I'm pretty good at is that if you were to ask for more information, I would dig it up and get it for you. So all you got to do is let me know.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that'd be great. All right. Any other questions or comments, Glenn?
Well, yeah, just I guess the $64,000 question is, if the bill should pass in the legislature, do we have the option? Does it designate the communities that Norwalk will be able to send students to, or do we have the option to opt out and not participate?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's a local decision, Glenn.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So
each local district identifies the number of seats, and that number could be 0.
Okay. All right. Great. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. All right, Chip, thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time to join.
Thank you.
My pleasure, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanyou.
Thank you, Chip.
You told the kids they didn't have to stay, but you didn't tell me that I didn't. All right. Enjoy the meeting, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you so much for your help. Okay. Kevin, we're on to the capital plan.
We are, and I won't burden you with a great deal of time here. I shared this document with you last week. So for some weeks, both Jose Figueroa and Chris Burney have been working on developing the plan. And just for the sake of the conversation, what you're looking at is the capital operating plan, which is different than from the capital bonded plan. The bonded plan is submitted to the town. That's developed by Chris, and that captures all the projects that are, very large sums of money that can be bonded. And so on the 5-year capital bonded plan, we have items like roof replacement and HVAC replacement. The capital operating plan really captures all of the other facility improvement proposals. And so, as I'm sure you're all well familiar with, more than a year ago, we came forward with a proposal to begin addressing the facility at Middlebrook. So Jose, as he was doing his diligence, ran into some further issues. So we went back and worked further with some vendors and recrafted this plan. And so that's the plan that you have. So what we are proposing is to come forward with a phased plan. And so the first phase of the plan would address the flooring, the lighting, the painting, and the ceiling tiles around the Sherilyn Peterson wing, and then in the main corridor and offices, down through the guidance wing. And so you can see, you have the document, to send it to you, but we're looking at, somewhere just over $600,000. Also included in that first phase was the deferred restroom renovation that we had proposed, kept in the budget, and then removed from the budget because, as you recall my recommendation, we weren't quite ready with this full plan. The good news is, on the restroom front, Jose, contacted another vendor and got another quote for work, which was substantially smaller than the initial. So there's good news there. Once that initial phase is complete, we would propose to, move further into the building, perhaps in the summer of 22, and target the 6th and 7th grade green classrooms and corridors, the art rooms, music rooms, the main gym, And then, similar, we would replace all the flooring, replace the tiles. There is a proposal here to address the gym partition, so that would be something we'd have to look at additionally. Address the painting, and then relocate some of the sprinklers in the art room, music room, and the guidance suite. That would be, what we would refer to as phase 2. And then phase 3 would be the 8 green suite, the cafeteria, those classrooms and corridors. There's an additional cost in this area because we believe that there's asbestos in this wing that will need to be abated. And so that's quite costly. And so we're proposing to kind of push that off and make that the last phase of this project for Middlebrook School. And then once we're finished with Middlebrook, I'll come back to this one in a second, so just stand by on that. Then we would move on to the high school. And so we would begin a similar process of phasing that building section by section and addressing the flooring, the lighting, the painting, and so on. And so Jose has, we're several years out here targeting, probably 2026, 2027 to begin that work. Beyond that project, Jose also put together some very rough estimates, and this would be a conversation that we'd have to have with the town about how and whether we address the needs in the Middlebrook auditorium as well as the needs in the boys and girls locker room. And so there's more work to be done on this proposed project, but he included it to call it to our attention. The auditorium does need quite a bit of work. As you know, there's no air conditioning in the Middlebrook auditorium. There are the lighting and the rigging, the stage and the bathrooms that are on the stage are all at the end of their useful lives and need to be addressed. Similarly, in the boys and girls locker room, the flooring needs to be addressed. The bathrooms need to be addressed. The lockers all need to be addressed. And so Jose is imagining that that's a pretty substantial project. So let me just stop there. So the good news is we have a plan and a proposal. And then the next step is to plan how to best pay for it so we can actually bring these projects to life.
Just as a quick question, the auditorium and the bathrooms, though, that would go under bonding. That wouldn't have to go into our budget.
It's a question. And so, as we've kind of talked around it, when I say we, I mean, Jose, a little bit with Chris Burney. I think it's a question and a consideration that we really have to work through with the town. And so, Jose wondered if it could be a bonded capital project if we encapsulated all of the work that needs to be done as a single project.
Okay. And then also for the elevator work, it doesn't sound like they're replacing the cabs or anything. It's just some minor updating or?
The elevators are all being replaced. So we're beginning with elevator replacement at the high school this summer. The freight elevator will be replaced this summer. And then next year, the second passenger elevator. And then third year, I believe there's an elevator at Cider Mill.
And they've gotten the price. It just, my work has always been done in New York with unions. So the prices just seemed a little low to me, but okay. That's all I had.
Kevin, what do you want us to do with this?
So I think, that I don't think you need to vote on this or take direct action. What was important for me and for Jose is to have a plan that makes sense and to get forward. And so, as we're planning budgets, we'll need to know that this work, if it's contained in our operating budget, is going to represent a substantial portion of that budget annually for the next number of years. I think we've had a question that we still need to pursue and with the Board of Finance and with the town, and where and in what budget do we want to? I guess the question is, how best to account for these costs and where. And so should the costs live inside the Board of Ed operating budget as a line, or should these costs, would they be better served to live outside the Board of Ed operating budget in the broader town budget on the line that the town accounts for, the other capital operating that the town conducts annually. So I think that's a question that we need, I think we need to share the plan. I think we need to kind of come to some consensus with the other two boards in town about how best to treat this. And then we, begin to move forward with executing the plans.
Right. I think that's the first question to ask, as we review, whether each of these phases sound reasonable and are they really necessary? All of those kinds of due diligence that the board needs to do in just reviewing the actual proposal. But then when it comes to the budgeting part, we do have to work with the town, because my understanding is there's for instance, a Board of Selectmen operating budget, and then there's a Board of Selectmen capital operating budget, and they're slightly different. So I'm just wondering if the Board of Ed could use that kind of model. I think that's one question to pursue, and we need a lot of help with that if these items are not bondable.
Yeah, agreed. So I think we can begin with Lynn and certainly through Anne. And I think, Jeff and some members of the Board of Finance would have an interest in having this conversation as well.
Okay. And then my other question is, with some of the federal funding that is being talked about and even allocated, is any of it appropriate to use on facilities projects?
I believe it is. We're still waiting for final guidance from the federal government on the ARP funds, but the preliminary estimates suggest that the school district will receive about $860,000 from the federal government, probably distributed over 2 years. In the preliminary descriptions we received, facility improvements and repairs were permissible subjects for that funding. And so as I've been thinking about it, we certainly have to finalize our plans for addressing learning recovery and unfinished learning. And so we're going to want to use some of those funds to provide some summer learning programs. And we're going to certainly want to use some of those funds to address some extended learning opportunities in the fall. But I would be interested, once the final guidance is available to us, and I believe that's going to be as soon as next week, to consider dedicating some portion of those ARP funds to beginning the Middlebrook project.
Okay. And so we need sort of a timeline for that information probably. So we'll come back to that before the end of the year.
Well, certainly, if we're looking at, I think there are some variables that are in play. First, we need to get the information from the state. And, I think I received an email today that said it's coming. So hopefully, in the early part of next week. And then, locally, Chuck and company are, working on finalizing our learning plans, which that'll be an agenda item on the next meeting, May 13th. And so I think at that point, we would have a clear understanding of what funds we have. We'd have some proposals for this board about how to allocate those. And I think at that point, we can consider, whether those funds can and should be used for some of these facilities projects. But as we're planning for the summer, certainly lining up vendors, we would feel if we wanted to do things this summer, there is a time sense, a sense of urgency here.
Okay. All right. Questions, comments?
Yeah, just a point of clarity in the presentation for the capital, renovations and all. What, if any of that, is included in the current budget proposal that's going to be approved at the town meeting or presented at the town meeting, or is none of it there?
Nothing in this is on the capital bonded plan. There's money in the capital bonded plan to address roofing, and so we have.
That's the that Chris is doing, but none of this renovation work or any of that is part of our next year's budget. Right?
No, it's presently not part of the.
So we have none of this budgeted for. Okay, fine. That's why I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on that. Nothing going forward.
Looking at it, if I remember correctly, the bathroom repairs at Middlebrook were part of the operating budget original proposal. Then as we worked through it and needed more information about, like, so what's the whole Middlebrook thing going to look like? It was determined to take those bathroom renovations and wait until it could become part of a bigger plan, which now it has become.
Correct.
But that was the only part that was in the operating budget to begin with, and that was removed during our discussions.
Yeah. So to get any of this done within the next year, we will need to go to the Board of Finance or Board of somewhere and get approval to expend these funds. I want everybody to be clear. None of this is going to happen in the next 12 months.
Unless
No.
Unless
Unless the federal funds come in.
Eligible and we you elected to allocate those funds, correct?
Yeah. Okay. So everyone's clear on that. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. There's no action items tonight. There are some dates for future meetings, and I'm sure we'll add a few to that list. Before we end, is there any but could we at some point get an update on graduation and what we might be allowed to do this year and what the students are thinking about? Not asking for a description tonight, but I'm sure that we would sort of like to hear some end of year plans for the school.
Well, we got an email about the date and the time at the field.
Well,
I was surprised.
There you go. I was out of town, not looking at my email. So thanks for
that it came from the students as opposed to Kevin or somebody. I was like, whoa, I guess that's done.
Okay.
Yeah, email came last week.
Go ahead, Bob.
All right, so take it away, Bob. Thank you, Glenn.
I've been providing updates certainly to our seniors and our upperclassmen, and sent an update to all of them last Friday. The graduation will be on Saturday, June 12th.
Right, I knew the date and the time, but I'm just trying to figure out the format.
We intend to be on Fujitani Field on a glorious Saturday afternoon with as many people as we can possibly accommodate. Certainly all parents. We have some analyses underway to determine just in the stands, both the visitor and the home stands, how many people will be able to get in there. We're continuing to monitor the updates from the state and the governor around loosening restrictions. So it looks very positive right now, and the kids and the committee have been wonderful so far, and the parents. We do have a rain date actually this year because we don't think we can just pivot back into the field house if we have a lot of people going into an interior facility. So we've got a rain date for Sunday at 1 o'clock, and we're moving it right along, and it's looking good right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lucille, are there comments from the public?
Debbie, can I ask a quick question real fast?
Oh, of course. Yes. Sorry, Jen.
Kevin, maybe our other schools, not today, but maybe our other schools could talk about their transition years also, what the plan is.
Sure. You know, what I'll do is I'll compile all that information. I'll send it in a note to you, and then we can have them at the next board meeting. Just do a 2-minute update.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Are there comments from the public, Lucille?
No, there are none.
Okay. All right. So I don't see any other questions from board members. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.